for the next hour, we're going to be talking about The Focused View. It's a podcast that I started about 18 months ago, and it's very much specifically focused on optics and the optical industry. There are people that have been on the podcast that are actually here today. Kelly has actually been on one of the episodes. Sorry for pointing it out, but there are also some people you're probably going to recognise that have been on when we go through the process. Just to get you guys going with regards to why it was created. So I'm not sure how many people consume podcasts normally. Would most people listen to podcasts? Pretty common these days. I know for myself it was one of my main, and it still is one of my main sources of, I guess, entertainment from that point of view. And when I was looking around to see if there was anything in optics or optometry, I didn't see anything. And so it sort of was like, why not? Not in Australia anyway. There's heaps in the States. And so I went to New York and I met with a couple of podcasters there, some US-based podcasters, spoke to them about ideas and how things worked and sort of learned a lot from them. And I thought, at the end of the day, I feel like there's a need in some capacity for there to be free information with this. And as the podcast, as I sort of speak to this and it evolves, I guess hopefully you can see that. And I'll be mindful of time. So what do we talk about? So the episodes, and again, I'm glad that not many people here have listened to them, so I can really sort of explain to you what they're about. So they're generally between half an hour to an hour, and I have, to this date, we're on 30 episodes, and we speak to people that have optical experience, whether they're optometrists, practice owners, whether they're, managers of stores, whether they're people within leadership, and leadership is a theme that we do discuss in it quite a bit. From my point of view, and if I take it a step back, my exposure to the optical industry has been, I guess, quite long-standing. I've pretty much grown up in it, family business. So I stepped into a lab called Opticare, which started by my old man in 1984, and I've been picking stock lenses and, in and amongst the lab environment since I've grown up. I ventured off a little bit. I went and I studied law. I did a business degree, and I thought, what, I'm not going to do optics. I've seen enough of it and I'm not interested from the business side of things. But yeah, that didn't eventuate, and then I sort of 2010 I came back to the family business, and ever since then I guess I've been evolving it. But having that experience from the lab point of view, being involved in a buying group, speaking to people as I do invariably, whether they're practice owners, whether they're university lecturers, whether they're international people. I do get to speak to a lot of people. It's always like I have these awesome conversations with people, and I wish that I could be someone else could be a fly on the wall and really listen in on this, because what that person's telling me is pretty insightful, and it's just one or two things that you hear and it's like all of a sudden it gets you going on another tangent. And that's what worked for me with podcasts. It's about, I guess, engaging with a medium that allows you to learn something really quickly and easily, and then sort of say, okay, well, that was something I liked, I want to explore that further. And that's the theme I feel like with podcasts, and why I thought it was a pretty good medium. So we speak to a whole array of people within the optical industry, and that's our sole focus. And it's about an hour, and it's an interview style of conversation where we just pick people's brains effectively, and we have people sort of listen in on that, and that's basically it. With regards to who benefits from it, so whether you're an independent practice owner, whether you're a manager, a dispenser, a student, part of a large practice. It basically, in this particular session too, is designed to give you some takeaways. So we're going to be speaking about a whole range of topics, but they're all drawn to the key element of optics and optical business. And so I think it's quite interesting, and I hope you find it to be the same. So to give you some context about today's discussion, I'm going to start walking as well. So you've got to, if I'm walking and you can't hear me, let me know. Actually, I can't walk. That's the whole point. So if we have a look at the journey of today's discussion, and I put it in a way where I didn't want to go through every single episode, but I wanted to craft it in a way where we could do a journey where you could create a bit of a timeline with regards to how you could use the podcast or how you can engage with the information that's currently on it, but also to give you a takeaway so you learn one or two things from today, hopefully, that it's not reinventing the wheel by any means, but it brings things back to light with regards to what you're thinking and how you can incorporate that back into your business. And again, you don't have to be a business owner. So you could be working in a practice and see of a concept or hear of a concept that excites you. And it's like, well, let me find out more about this. And I'll speak to how you do that along the way as well. So basically, I've broken it up into 4 stages. The first stage is establishing a strong foundation for your practice. The second stage is enhancing patient care and operational efficiency. The third one, which is obviously where a lot of us are drawn to at first instance, is marketing and growth strategies for independent practices. The fourth is leadership and team empowerment, and I guess that human factor, which really ties it all together. And then we'll conclude it really quickly. So, step 1, establishing a strong foundation for your practice. The structure of this talk as well, I'll be drawing on episodes, and I'll have some snippets in there from the episodes so you can actually hear from people. So I'm not sure about the other talks that you've been to, but it won't just be me talking. There'll be about 10 or 15 other people that are going to sort of be joining in, but through the medium of the PowerPoint. I think for any practice, one thing you've got to ascertain or understand, an independent practice or whatever it may be, and sometimes something you can ask yourself is, what makes a practice successful at its core? I'm going to pose that as a question if that's okay. I'm not sure if anyone's willing to have a bit of a stab at in terms of what they think makes a successful practice. Fair enough. So, well, that's good. We'll go through a few things that I believe in conversations that I've had with people over the time that does point that out. So, first person who we're going to hear from is a lady by Joanne. Joanne is part of our network, I guess. And she is now OptiPro's commercial manager. I won't speak about OptiPro by any means, but if there's anything that you hear from that resonates with you, Joe's someone that you can reach out with, along with any of the other guests that you hear along the way. So feel free that if they're saying something to you that triggers something, keep that in mind, keep the name in mind, and feel free to reach out to them. That's the whole point of the podcast in that regard. So, the very first step towards any thriving practice, Joanne will point out, is clarifying what sets your practice apart. And so before I take the words out of her mouth, I'll let her say it herself.
Me some examples of a store that has identified a point of difference and how it's played out.
The example I probably would give you is something to do with, I work with a practice that was looking at children's vision. They were known for it, they dabbled in it, but they were getting a lot more customers and they really wanted to focus in on it. So look, we looked at a few things. I mean, vision, mission is really important, really understanding why you're there and what you want to achieve. So where are you situated now and why are you doing what you're doing, but also what do you want to be seen as and what are you looking to achieve in the future? That's an important starting point. But then looking at things like, building a plan around, do the Optoms align with that? Do you have Optoms that actually understand kids' vision? Are you doing continued training with them? Are they looking at all scopes across that? Are the team aligned, not just in their skills, but in their personalities and their ability to deal with children? Because the front-facing people, it's really important. Little things like when a kid comes in, getting down on your knees and being at their level is really important. So it's about skills and behaviours.
All right. So she spoke about a few things there, but the first part was the main part, and that was
some examples of a store that has identified a point of difference and how it's played out.
Okay. So what Joanne's emphasising there in the first part is establishing a clear vision and mission, and then she speaks to values. And it's a really, it's a foundational concept, but you've got to understand who your target patient is, and that how you determine that, I guess, is another question. Whether it's demographics, whether it's a passion that you inherit or you like or you want to portray to the market, whether it's a specialization, and we'll touch on things like that. But understanding what they are really clear, and then Joe does go on to mention there, how that has to then transcend through the staff and the people within the practice too. And again, these are all nice ideas, right? But again, idea to reality is also a different thing. But this is the sort of stuff that we don't necessarily delve into specifically, but we start to touch on it. So you guys can, I guess, sort of circle back to it at a certain point if you're, again, interested in it. Now, I'm mindful if I press this. Yeah, it works. Okay. So, identifying your point of interest. So there's a few things that we can do. I guess you ask yourself, and again, this is a foundational basic concept, what is your unique value to your patients? What is it that you're bringing to the table? What makes you different? Because inherently, what makes you different is what will make your business different. It's you, and you are part of that, and you generally are, especially if you're in a small business, an independent business, you become that particular business. So what is it about you that makes you unique, and what makes you tick, and how do you then, I guess, relay that to your business and to your customers? Like I said, every decision from your services offered, patient experience should reinforce. This clarity is not about attracting any patient, it's about attracting the right patient. So some tips here. Write things down. So what are your values? What are your unique services? Ensure your marketing is consistent with that. Make sure you're communicating that. And if you focus, and Joe in that particular spiel spoke about children's vision in particular, and identifying if that's an example. So I guess that's the first point. So know your point of difference. And what you're going to find with a lot of the topics that we discussed today are they aren't overwhelming. They're not, like I said, they're not rocket science things, but they're things that you need to check in with from time to time. So second thing, knowing your numbers. Probably the thing that we least like to do. Checking with numbers, seeing how things are going. So running a practice isn't just about clinical care. Business, unfortunately, matters, and so that's understanding what is important and how you track that and how you monitor that. There are businesses that do that really well. There are others that don't. So understanding what they are is really, really important, and checking in with your KPIs. So let's see what Joe has to say about this.
Let's just say we want to start analysing the business. Where do I start?
It's a hard one because it's really hard to look at yourself and be critical. But I think a good way to start is to look at the numbers. I always say they don't lie, they tell a story, so they give you really good information. And if you're unsure of what your next steps are, it's a good way to have a good look at the business. Once you look at that, you'll be able to understand if you should be working on something internally or externally. Internally essentially just means that you're looking at how much more you can make from each patient. Usually a practice with a high fill rate where you don't really have the opportunity for another room or another optom would work a little bit on internal. Or external is more about getting more bums on seats. So it's usually you've got a low fill rate, you need to do a little bit of marketing, but you also need to ensure that your numbers are good, because bringing new people in, you only get one chance at a first impression.
So again, what Joe's saying there, and the main takeaway from that particular clip was this internal, external concept. So KPIs are numerous, and you can look at a business in any particular way. But the main thing I guess you want to identify is, are you looking at internal figures or are you going to look at external? So is it more about how you can refine your processes, reduce costs, things like that, or is it more about how are you going to attract more customers to your business that aren't necessarily part of your ecosystem at the moment? So again, not going too deep into the numbers.
Let's just say we want.
Sorry, that's not the one I need to be pressing. Understanding that data is critical, and it's again why people generally gravitate away from it. But once you do get it, you get it. Another thing that Joe pointed out in this particular episode was patterns. So obviously, Joe's quite good at this with regards to identifying store metrics, seeing where they can improve, and she does that by looking at patterns. And this is where you got to get into your Excel sheets and your practice management systems and all that sort of stuff. So it's not necessarily the nicest thing, it's not the thing that comes naturally to us, so it's why we actually sort of can put it off. But again, depending on the nature of our business and our business structure, we might have support in that regard. So again, I'm not going to read that out, but hopefully you've set that key insight with regards to patterns and understanding how, if you can identify some certain numbers, and generally most business owners have a good gut instinct if they're connected with the business with regards to what is going well and what isn't. Obviously the biggest indicator is the bank balance at the end of the month. But again, if you want to add strategy to that, I think that's where really understanding your numbers. Again, foundational things that you need to know. Okay. In light of this particular, I guess, foundational thing, another concept that was really, really, I guess, I saw with regards to the metrics of who was listening and what they're listening to, this concept of private billing versus bulk billing. Does anyone here private bill? Yeah. So everyone else bulk bills? Have they had the thought? Yeah. And what, if it's okay to ask, what has held you back? Like, what's been the thing that's, I guess, put it off? Yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. For sure. Yeah. No, and 1,000%. And I guess the other thing is that's what works for you. That's what works. The important thing, and this is a concept that runs throughout the podcast, is you just think about it. And you think about it, and obviously you do consistently, but like from time to time, can we do it? And then the next part, and I do refer to this quite a bit, is this whole networking, because once you speak to someone that has done it and done it well, all of a sudden that might open up some doors. And so that was sort of a takeaway that I got from Andrew, and I'll let him speak. So this particular episode, Andrew, who is the CEO of Optometry Australia in New South Wales, spoke about this and his findings dealing with the optoms, specifically in New South Wales.
It's important for practices to consider private billing if they're not already doing it.
I think it's the only way to maintain really high quality care. The retail space is very competitive. There are big players out there who work on marketing principles and They know how to price. And so if on similar products, you're way off the mark in terms of price, it's not going to work. By and large, if you're competing in a retail market, you've got to be price competitive. So that means that your ability to cross-subsidise by higher prices on product is limited. So how do you change your income point? The only way to do that is to charge for what you deliver. And that's why I think people are going to be forced to look at whether bulk billing is a sustainable model for them going forward, or introduce at least some level of private billing.
Okay, and again, it's just thought provocative. So it doesn't, he used some pretty strong words. They're like forced to. So obviously no one's forced to do anything, but it's just a consideration to have. And I guess, again, speaking to people that have done it and not done it, it works for both. And I guess if it's something that you're interested in doing, it's like, well, then how can I actually incorporate that to my practice?
It's important for practices to consider private billing if they're not already.
So if you are considering it, or again, and this is the sort of the takeaways that Andrew has mentioned throughout his episode, and again, it's just a bit of a summary here, so you can get a little bit of a perspective as to the things we talk about. So bulk billing, obviously convenient, can have shorter consultations. If you are charging, you can perhaps allow for more time, provide a different level of care, not necessarily better, just different. The other thing that I'm always a fan of, there's no such thing as wrong or right. We have a way, we have a process. It's about sticking to whatever works for us. And according to Andrew, practices that made the shift didn't see better income. They also saw improved patient outcomes. And this is because optoms don't necessarily feel as rushed. It's a bold step, but it's one that can elevate care. So again, it's a foundational concept. It's obviously something that's discussed quite extensively with it throughout the industry. A lot more businesses are doing it. And the other thing I just mentioned is not something that you have to do for everyone. So you could figure out if you are going to incorporate it into your practice, do you do it for a certain subset of patients, or are you looking at a specific, way of focusing in on certain people, whether it's with myopia management or with children vision or something along those lines. The last thing in point one will be building an effective team culture, because obviously that's the part of it. You can hopefully see the theme there as to how we're building this. Obviously, we're focusing on knowing what we want to do, looking at our numbers, understanding that financially there's a big part of that with private billing or bulk billing, and then looking at team culture, because the people do obviously make a difference. So no practice can flourish without a strong team. Let's hear what Joe has to say about this.
With regards to knowledge and understanding where the deficiencies may lie and what to do?
Well, I think review processes are always thought of as something that you do to decide whether somebody gets a pay rise or whether they're doing a good job. The other component of it often is a behavioural piece, but there's also the education. So looking at what their learning opportunities are, talking about the role that they play when you're having a coffee conversation or something, just to say, what else can we do to make sure that you have all the information that you need, but also on the floor stuff. If you're on the floor and you're watching and you're engaged and you're trying to take part in what's happening in the practice, you'll hear the little gaps that might be there when they're talking to a patient, the things they might have said that you think, oh, maybe I need to train them on that, or maybe they could have said it a different way. So I think doing a little bit of a learning plan, but also just watching on the floor is probably other ways to do it rather than a full formal process.
Yeah.
Because you can pull out just that education piece if you want.
Is there anything...
So the other thing that Joe did mention there is, and it sort of ties into culture, because culture is a massive topic in itself. But I think one of the cornerstones of culture is training and education and the support that you provide your staff. And so Joe's basically speaking to that, because a lot of the things, especially when it comes to culture or leadership, do intertwine quite significantly. So it also then helps with retention and obviously training or onboarding, and those little processes that really do make up the feel. And again, I mean, culture is, again, like I said, it's a bit of a buzzword, but it's ultimately how do your staff feel when they walk into the practice? Do they want to be there? Are they happy there? And there are always things that happen. So it's never perfect. But, if it isn't perfect, what are the mechanisms? How can things improve? Are there open communication channels? Is there training? Because effectively, it all comes down to that. It's a level of communication and how are you structuring that? So training is just a form of communication, but it's done in a structured way, obviously to teach or to guide them and to help improve them. And that's the sort of stuff that helps with culture. And again, it's a massive thing, but they're the sort of things that we do discuss, and it just gets you thinking about certain things. So
is recognition and appreciation in retaining staff, and what are some of the practical ways to show appreciation to your team?
I think it's one of the highest things. It always rates high praise, knowing that they want to feel wanted, they want to feel like they're doing a good job. They want you to tell them that, thanks, that was great.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much to say thank you to people at all. Yet it doesn't happen very often, right? So I worked in a place where I had a manager, an owner, every day would wait at the door and thank every single person when they walked out that door to say thanks for the great day every single day. So they made sure that they finished what they were doing, got down there, knowing the times that people would leave. And for that session of time, he stood there and said that to every single person.
Wow.
And you can imagine that everyone loved him.
Absolutely.
And to this day, I still chat to him, and I haven't worked for him for 25 years, right?
Wow.
Still loved him. So I think little things like that.
Again, that's a bit loud there, doesn't it? Let's go back. All right, so again, that's a little tip there with regards to culture and things, saying a simple thank you. And that again ties down to the fact that a lot of these concepts aren't rocket science. They're things that can be implemented relatively quickly, which again is the premise of the podcast. It's not to give you, a buzzword or talk about AI in a way that you're going to be like, well, what the hell is that going to do for me and how is that going to work for me? It's like, right, it's as simple as in this instance, there was a store and there was an owner and they happened to say goodbye to everyone or thank you at the end of every day. And again, it may not work for everyone, but it's a little concept that did work for somebody, and it's about sharing that sort of tip so that you might want to incorporate it or something similar. The second part of it all is enhancing patient care. So now we're looking at it, I guess, from a different perspective, where we're speaking more about the services specifically that are being provided in the store and the scope of that and what that might look like and how we can improve that from that concept. And again, some really, I guess, basic, but I think important things that need to be addressed from time to time. So when we're looking at the basics, we're talking about optimizing patient care, which obviously, for any independent practice or any practice at all for that matter, is the heart of it. Is the heart of it all. It's all about the patient. Well, it should be all about the patient. Okay, so patient recalls, probably a really simple one. Who thinks they do it really well? That's good. Some honesty. Right. So you guys might have heard of Fatin. She's the co-founder of Eye to Eye Marketing 360, and she talked about recall and how you can master it and how it can help you with your practice. Again, without stating the obvious as to what it can do, it's more about how can you do it and some ways to assist.
The outpatient recalls, and why are they so crucial for optometry practices?
So look, Michael, I don't know about yourself, but my life is so hectic. Between running a company, I'm a mum, there's simply just not enough hours in a day. So it's so easy for me personally to lose track of things like scheduling an annual checkup or, booking medical appointments for my children, dental checkups. So timely follow-ups ensure that our patients are receiving the ongoing attention that they need for optical eye health. It's our duty of care, it's the optometrist's duty of care to ensure patients are coming back regularly. So it's not just about ticking the box, it's about that continuity of care. It's about catching issues early. It's about showing patients that we care about their well-being.
What exactly are patient?
Right. So again, it's a really quick one. It's something that we can work on with regards to refining our processes and getting better at. But I think what the one of the take homes, and there is another one that I'll mention later, one of the take homes from Fatin that I got there is understanding that the recalls is not just a process from the point of view of getting the patient in just for the sake of filling, your calendar up, which it is, but it's also about the continuing care about it. And what I like about that is the fact that if you can harness a bit of a noble purpose to why you're doing it, which it is, you're getting them back in to make sure that their eye care is being met. And if you can sort of rejig that thought in your process, it might make it, if it is, an onerous task, something that you can't do. But also it might mean that there are people out there that can help you in that regard as well. So, but it's a simple thing that can be done to, again, help improve your practice. Again, you can sort of get a little bit of the concept with regards to what we're on about here with regards to the podcast. So personalizing communication, reaching out on a proactive level, whether it's emails, calls, texts, we all have a particular strategy. Being on the patient's radar, obviously they're inundated with messaging all day long. Segmenting can help. Obviously there's a whole heap of ways to improve it. But again, it's not for me today to go into that. It's more about to point out what it could be or things that you could look at to help improve your store. Really basic one. Other things that we can look at are expanding clinical health, clinical services. The biggest one being, well, not the biggest, one of them being myopia management. So in this instance, it's about the scope and expanding the scope with regards to what you're offering in your practice. But at the same time, this is an example of one. So it could be a few other things as well. So this is Andrew again from OA talking about
The
talking
key
about
challenges
his
and
opinion.
opportunities that Optometry Australia can identify in the realm of myopia control.
When I first started here, one of the things I vividly remember was that optometry owned the contact lens space. You wanted contact lenses, you saw your optometrist because no one else did it. We lost it. And now the vast bulk of contact lens sales is online. And we lost it because we didn't grab it with both hands and really reinforce to the public that if you needed, in that case, contact lens care, it's not just a stick it on your eye, go away, everything will be all right. You need to see your optometrist. We didn't do it. I'm talking we collectively as the profession. We can't do that with myopia.
Okay.
So we have to get out and really tell the public what myopia is, but also why their optometrist is the best placed person to manage it.
Okay, and he speaks there in a broader context with regards to the community as well. But obviously, as individual stores, we've got our part to play with regards to how we're communicating. And this falls into that. If you're looking at expanding your clinical services, how are you going about that? Which also does lead into your unique selling proposition, if that's obviously something that you've identified as important to you. But understanding that there is an evolving, I guess,
The key
scope of practice that is, I guess, more and more prevalent these days, and we're getting more and more into it. So this next episode that I'll highlight is from Jagrup Lalu, who's a New Zealand-based optom, and he started in New Zealand the first myopia myopia management control centre in Auckland, I think it was. And we spoke about how you can actually incorporate it into your store if it's something that you decided you want to do. Again, as an example of expanding your services or looking for new niches that you could potentially service.
Say you're brand new and you know it's happening and you want to be a part of it. How do you see an optometry practice incorporating myopia management and the strategies that involve with regards to their business offering?
The first thing you do is you reach out to someone who's done it already. Any one of us that have done it for any amount of time will always help someone that's new to get into it, because what we don't want is for practitioners to find it difficult and then give up. So we'd rather just go, here's all the answers, set it up, run it, and if you run into trouble, get in touch. And that just takes a lot of the heavy lifting out, because we've done all the things, we're going through all the different protocols and the ways that you've got to teach staff and all of those things. We've worked out all the general pricing of everything. We can make it pretty much out of the box now. So that's what I would probably encourage. And there's plenty of us out here who've done it. And if you're not confident talking to someone who's in your same town, then talk to someone who's in a different town and they'll help you.
So in that instance, and that speaks to what I was saying earlier before, say about the private billing versus bulk billing, networking is super critical with things like this. So if it is something that you're looking to do, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. There is a model that's probably been adopted somewhere. And if it's not going to be the Optom across the road, obviously, which is probably not going to be, look to other areas of Australia or other regions. So reaching out and identifying people. So in this instance, you listen to that podcast, if it's something you're interested in doing, you can reach out to him and ask him for an opinion. How can I do it? Again, in principle, that's the whole sort of premise of what we're doing. And I guess that knowledge being really accessible in a public place that doesn't cost anything to do, which you can do listening in the car on the way home, as you would with any other podcast. All right, let's go to that.
Say you're brand new and you know it's happening and you want to be a part of it. How do you...
For any amount of time,
Okay, so we've been through that. Another area where it comes to is looking for special inclusive care. So looking at things in a different way and identifying patients that perhaps have unique needs. So we spoke to Marianne Coleman, and she's an orthoptist and a pretty heavy-duty researcher, and she really focuses in on providing patient eye care to patients with dementia. Not sure if that's a thought that anyone's had, but once you do hear about it, it does shed some light on some different things that could be done in that instance, and whether that's something that we're incorporating into our practice. And again, it could be a point of difference area as well, that you'd want to promote, or letting your community know that's something that you, I guess, cater to.
Solutions for making an optometry practice more dementia friendly.
So the best thing that we can all do as eye care professionals is to see beyond dementia to the person. Person-centered care is what we pride ourselves on. And so having a little bit of understanding about what dementia is and what it's not is kind of the least we can do, really. There's a company called Dementia Training Australia, and they have free online training about dementia. So you can go online and do their dementia discovery course for free. And even just doing a few of these can help you to understand dementia a little bit better, because And the least we can do is have that understanding of how cognitive impairment can actually impact upon your day-to-day interactions with that person in the optometry practice context, whether you're the optometrist doing a test or an optical dispenser providing customer service and helping to pick frames.
So something that Marianne pulled me up on when I was speaking to her is I referred to it as, dementia patients, and she was pretty quick to point out to me that that's not the case. They're patients with dementia, and so even terminology like that and how it can affect people is pretty powerful as well. So I was oblivious to that, but in that conversation it became known to me. And again, it's an example of a point where, not many people would know that, but it's something that you could learn relatively quickly just by having that conversation. How often are people going to speak to Marianne? Probably not too often, I would imagine. But if you know that she's there and she specialises in this, well, now you know who to speak to if it's something that you're interested in. And I'll harp on that probably a little bit too much, but I guess it's the principle of the whole essence of the podcast. With regards to really sort of providing that service and ensuring that it's beneficial and you're improving the practice, and Marianne did point out to it with regards to training. So looking at, and I guess in that some way it's continuing professional education. We know for optometrists it's mandatory, so it gets done, obviously. But the other big part of our industry, and it's my background too, is as a dispenser. And so when you're a dispenser, there isn't really any official training. But as we know now with the vehicles of, whether it's ACOD, ODA, TAFE, New South Wales, obviously there are, training platforms and ongoing providers. So ODA in particular, I'm sure you've all heard of them, and speaking to the part of the industry that doesn't need CPD points from the point of view of it being an obligation for your licensing or anything like that. But if you do provide those types of environments within your practice, I guess ensuring that your practice is up to date, and that, again, it's a simple concept, but speaking to people that know the significance of this and can tell you in a really relatable way, I think is engaging. So let's hear what April had to say. You can tell the difference between the older podcasts where there wasn't any video to the newer ones that do have video. So these are just pretty much all
evolving landscape of dispensing and optical dispensing. How do you see CPD evolving in the future, and what steps can dispensers take to ensure they remain on top of their game?
Well, look, I think it's pretty clear that CPD is more important than ever for optical dispensing, mainly because we work in an evolving industry. It's not the same from one day to the next. So engaging in any self-learning, that's what's going to keep you up to date and keep you up to date with changing trends and new products. And it will help you maintain and enhance your knowledge and your skills to ultimately deliver what we should be delivering, and that's essentially a professional service. So actually, because sometimes CPD can be about ensuring your skills stay strong and doesn't always have to be about introducing something brand new, I mentioned the word maintain rather than necessarily, starting from scratch. So no matter how long you've been in the industry, how well you think you know your game, it's still of the utmost importance. So in the future, I think we'll see a greater investment from employers when it comes to making CPD more accessible for their teams.
So again, an example there though. So obviously it goes without saying that practices that invest in training, and there are practices here, I'm sure, that do that and do see the benefit of it, but ensuring that that's continuing to happen will obviously, provide a better environment for the patients, for the store, for the staff. So making sure we're allocating time and a budget for this. Again, it's something that, we've noticed from the conversations that we've had makes a difference. And yeah, so there's a few other examples there. What's for dispensers in particular, what's interesting about CPD points is where it might take you. So there are instances where you start off as a dispenser that I've heard of, and they end up in teaching or training or education because that's the area that they wanted to sort of get into, but they didn't know how to, and they've used this as a vehicle. Pretty rare, but again, it's those sort of stories I think that can inspire other people to want to be a part of the industry too, and obviously then in turn help the practice. All right, where are we at? So optimizing practice, stock management. So again, this is probably more of a fundamental concept, but understanding the importance of stock management, a conversation that we had with Jo about this, and I'll see what she has to say.
Know your stock needs. How can one figure that out? Is it as simple as someone just knowing, or is there a process that you're experienced with regards to how that could be undertaken, and what would you suggest people would consider in this aspect when it comes to understanding your stock needs?
Well, there's a few things you can do. I think you've all heard me talk about the census report, which I love dearly. And
understanding what that means into a practice, so you know what your demographic is. So I think understanding who the patients are that are coming in, but also looking at your reports, because once you look at your reports, you can see the information. You can pull out reports about what you've sold in the last year. You can get the highest sellers. You can see what your margin is. You can see lots of information from the reports you can get out of Optimate and Sunnex in general. But demographics are really important, so have a think about the customers as well that are coming in the door.
Yeah, again, so a pretty basic concept there, but something that you might want to consider. I mean, how many people have gone onto the census website and have looked at the demographics of their local area in the last 6 months, 12 months, or whenever the census was last done? I'm not sure, maybe you guys are, but it's just again another insight that you could practice doing to see, what it is out there. What's the rate of university versus trades, or are there particular trades that are more prevalent? Most people would know that or think that they would, but just verifying and checking with that from time to time can change things. Optimizing practice operation for technology. So this is this is the area now where all the buzzwords are happening with AI and technology. And I had a really good, interesting chat with Nicola Mountford from Optometry Australia, who is the Optometry Advancement Advisor. So she talks about digital health specifically, e-health records, and I guess using AI. I mean, I use that term very loosely because AI is massive, I feel, and there's so much we don't know about it. But some people claim that they do, but I think for the most part, we're still learning a lot about it. But from that point of view, technology and as an industry, I think we lag behind other parts of society with regards to how quickly we adopt technology, and rightfully so. And what Nicola does at OA is she is, I guess, at the back end, really understanding what optometrists in particular need to understand digital health and not to be so afraid of it, coming up with key terminologies, and there's a really big play there. But that's actually, they're all interesting episodes, but this one was quite interesting from that digital health perspective that, again, compared to other allied health professionals and other, say, or just doctors and GPs and things like that, optometry isn't quite at that level yet.
Emerging technologies from a broader concept roll out in the future of optometry, and is there anything specific that we should be keeping an eye on?
The thing about emerging technologies is they're just accelerating at such a great pace. There's such a buzz around them. And yet, even for myself, I'm really trying to keep abreast of the advances in these areas. And sometimes, I guess because of the commercial benefits behind new technologies emerging, you don't hear about them until they actually hit the market. But I think that what optometrists need to know is to be able to understand the science behind what they're using, the way in which they're using it, and their responsibility in regards to that. So what I mean by that is that optometrists are starting to incorporate AI into their practice. So they need to understand the algorithm behind the AI that they're using, and if there's any bias in the information that it's delivering.
How do you see emerging technologies?
Sorry, I have to do that and go back to it so we don't hear that again. All right, so again, there's an interesting concept there, and that's, like I said, quite an interesting episode from that point of view in terms of what is being done at a back-end level with regards to getting the industry and optometrists specifically, updated with the latest things that are happening with digital health. But I guess it's being mindful of that and sort of hearing what these people have to say. That I find is the exciting part of it all. The last one that we'll speak about when it comes to optimizing practice operations for efficiencies are things like cyber threats. And again, this is Luke Arundel, who's spoken as well over the course of the weekend. But he's the Chief Clinical Officer, focuses a lot on cybersecurity and legal implications that optometrists might face from time to time. But this is a really interesting concept, and one that as a small business I'd never thought of until I had a conversation with Luke about it, and I was like, geez, that's pretty interesting. So let's hear what he has to say about it.
Optometry practice is particularly vulnerable to cyber attacks.
First and foremost, it's because we're in the health sector. It's a favourite target of cyber criminals. It's typically number 2 on their list after finance. So they know health records contain sensitive information, which is valuable to them. On the dark web, you can get a stolen credit card for $1 to $3. A Medicare number, there's a massive leak in 2017. So if that Medicare hotline goes down, fine. You can just pop onto the dark web for $20 or $30. You can get any Medicare number that you want. And what they find, particularly over in America, they talk about a complete health record, or what the cyber crims refer to as a FULS. That kind of thing is selling for $50 to $60. A lot of the health information is used for identity theft and fraud, which is more valuable, and that's why they place higher information on it.
Why are optometry practices?
All right, got to do the trick there. Okay, so again, it's probably a concept that, again, is not one that we consider, but if we are hacked, and there are stories that we've heard of where they've hacked it and they've basically held it to ransom, but if they do and they take all that information, well, what I guess liability are you under in that instance? So, and there are tips in that particular episode that will take you through what you can do to get your practice up to speed with cybersecurity. It's obviously something you can't fully avoid, but whether it's insurances, whether it's going through training, which there is a lot of free training on in this space, again, making it known. And once it's known, then it's up to you whether you want to use that information or just pass it on. Okay, the third part is probably the part that a lot of us get excited by, perhaps, which is marketing. It's the growth part. It's the part that we see a lot of, whether it's the suppliers pushing it in certain ways and trying to assist us, or or just the general industry with regards to marketing support and marketing help and understanding the importance of marketing. It is obviously, so it does get a little bit of traction. I probably won't spend as much time on it because marketing is quite, I guess, in principle, it's quite well known. I mean, you know the elements of marketing, whether it's digital, whether it's online, your websites. So I might, just for the sake of time, just go through them a little bit quicker than I would otherwise. But effectively, again, this is a conversation that was had with Joe. Optimizing practice operations for efficiency when it comes to marketing. We are looking here at a major online presence, and again, it goes without saying, your website. I think in today's day and age, everyone's websites are pretty much up to standard. I feel like there are very few that aren't, but for the most part, sort of 5, 6, 7 years ago, maybe not the case, but definitely now we're all sort of building the mobile responsive, SEO friendly style of websites that are attracting the information or attracting the customers potentially that we want. It's probably the only thing I'd say is with regards to websites, it's probably how often you're updating them and the information you're putting on them, and making sure that resonates with your unique selling position too. So if you're focusing on an area, making sure that you've got that listed on your website, especially if you're looking. So generally, again, traditionally, most independent practices, what they do is they will focusing on a 3 or 5 kilometre radius from their practice, and that's what they'll market, again, depending on whether you're rural or not. And in that instance, if you're if you're going to focus on a specialisation, you don't necessarily have to limit yourself to the 3 or 5 kilometres. So you can, there are instances where you can focus citywide, or if you're focusing on a particular specialty or something. So you're not limited to your, again, 3 to 5, and I've just used that as a number out of the air. It could be anything, but I guess that's probably the only thing we see from websites, from the experience that we've had. Again, Google's your friend, so making sure that you're doing all that sort of stuff, and they're discussed in the podcast at certain points, making sure it's up to date. Reviews, obviously, as long as you're not endorsing them or promoting them, any reviews about you obviously are fine, but it's more about if you're promoting them on your website, you can get into a bit of trouble with that. So, but being mindful of what you can and can't do is pretty important, but at the same time, just being aware of what's about. But again, I think there are enough structures in the industry as a whole that speak about marketing for us to kind of know what's happening in that regard. Whereas cybersecurity, who's talking about that? Not many people. Again, leveraging social media to connect locally, that's probably another tip as well. I think, as local businesses, making sure that we're engaging with the local community. This is a pretty interesting one, so I'll just probably play this one just so we can see what Joe has to say about.
Do you think stores should be focusing on when they're putting up content on their Facebook or Instagram pages?
The way it sort of works now, you've got to have time to plan and book things. If you're looking at Facebook, I'd be talking to every patient who's picking up glasses to see if they're comfortable to have their picture taken. If an optom has a really interesting case in the room, and then they've got these really great glasses and people are really happy, put a little bit of a story up. That's the stuff that people love. You're not allowed to tag them, but you can tell them when it's going to be on. And then if they tag other people, that's actually okay. For Instagram, I'd be probably putting up a little bit more fashion stuff. And if you want to do it with your team, if there's new products that come into the store, take pictures of the team wearing them and showcasing that product, and then use that imagery for Instagram, and hashtag the supplier, hashtag everything that you want to, hashtag the word glasses. It'll go to, there's millions of people that use that, so you could end up anywhere, so hashtag it.
Yeah, so again, that's relatively well known. Calendars and being consistent with creating content calendars and stuff like that. Again, I think we understand the importance of that. So there isn't much there that I'd probably want to go into. Obviously, harnessing patient testimonials, word of mouth. Again, Google reviews. It seems to be a thing everyone does now. So I guess ensuring that we're sort of focusing on that and that, but being mindful of where you can do. So again, if it's about the store or maybe the service or like the offering or a brand or something, but obviously nothing again. With regards to, I think, specific optometrists and stuff like that, you've got to be really sort of mindful of that. But yeah, reach out to whoever you need to find out whether it's the right thing to do or not when it comes to the promotion of testimonials specifically, because that is a bit of a sensitive area. Selling your services, so improving conversations ethically. So this is an interesting chat I had with Emma Gillis. She floats around. She helps ODMA as well, so you might have seen her around. But we speak here about trust-based selling. One of the hardest things of our industry, obviously, is being healthcare and retail, and you guys know this all too well. There can be a little bit of a conflict of interest with regards to selling as opposed to providing a service or providing a medical device that's actually assisting and aiding in the correction of vision. So understanding and having your mindset in a particular way might assist yourself or the team. So I think this is an interesting conversation as well.
Trust-based selling differ from traditional sale approaches, and what makes it more effective?
So the traditional sales approach is, this is your problem, this is what you need, and these are all the other things that you need as well. So we're going to start to upgrade you straight off. So I might go in thinking I'm going to spend this amount, but then all these add-ons come on, I have to have, and we feel that we're being pressured into, and that's the convincing part of it. Trust-based selling switches that round to taking time to understand, what does the patient need? Not what I think they need, what do they actually need? And linking the solution that we give them to the pain point that they have. So it's understanding the need that they have and using different communication skills to connect to that person.
How does trust...
So again, their summary in that basically is flipping the narrative a little bit and providing a solution as opposed to selling a product. I mean, that was the take home with the chat with Emma. The last part of the equation that we're presenting today is leadership and the team. It's a little bit about the self, but it also is how can we improve the people around us. Obviously, training is a pretty big part of this, but how does that, again, it touches on that culture, because it does wrap into things with regards to the finalisation. I mean, you've got to have a good team to have anything really be successful and meaningful, I feel. So people side is probably the most important part of all of this. So I spoke to a few people in this regard. We're speaking about training specifically. So I spoke to a lady by the name of Kayla. She's a consultant to about 1,200 stores in the US, and she really is passionate on a few topics, but with regards to leadership and setting clear goals and really being, I guess, clear in your messaging and how to create structure around how you communicate, and I guess how that then translates into leadership. I think it's a practical sort of spin on it.
Talk to me about the importance of structured training in practice and I guess the benefit that has as opposed to the more ad hoc, which I'm sure the smaller independent practices do.
Most small businesses don't have a training plan. They don't have a training structure. It is, Mary is the best optician that we have. She's really great. Here's our office manual. Here are our policies. This is typically how we do things. Now follow me around and I'm going to teach you how we do our day to day. That is necessary in our industry. However, in doing that, we don't realize how much is actually missed in the foundational knowledge of why the heck we do what we do. So with the importance of the structured training, especially the way that we have it set up, is to set it up in a way that the new hire can be a contributing part of the team as quickly as possible.
So can you talk to me about the importance?
So that's a pretty interesting concept there and quite broad in nature, because obviously it's about how that structure can create a good culture within the team, and obviously that's sort of saying a lot about the people that are creating those goals and those structures around them, because that's really what people are looking for. I feel more than anything is policies, as processes, flexibility amongst all of that, and how that I guess then translates to the team culture and the leadership that the team would bring, or the management would bring with regards to that. She also talks more about training, and I guess another way that you can foster that, and this is maybe speaking more to the management, is about creating these check-ins. And again, whether it's the owner or whether it's a practice manager, the power of it. And again, really simple in nature, but obviously can be neglected, and when left neglected, can create issues further down the track.
Very important for the team leader, whoever that may be, to have quarterly check-ins individually with every team member. Think about a school year for an elementary student, right? If you dropped your kid off at school when school started for the school year, and you picked him up at the end of the school year, and you're like, hey, why do you have all these bad grades? What's going on? Well, there were no check-ins. It seems silly to do that with elementary kids, right? However, do we do that with our teams? Many do, where we don't really have check-ins on their overall performance. So what I recommend for practices to do as a whole is to have leadership mark out half a day and meet one-on-one with every person. When you have this training structure of meeting with them every quarter, it stops a lot of the griping because people feel heard, right? And then the leader also that we encourage is ask them, what support do you need from me in order to get these things to happen?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, that last one. I mean, a lot of the times, if you're in a position of management, you might not stop to think as to what we can do to improve, or what we can do to help, and what resources are we not providing, perhaps. And so, being open to that kind of questioning, I think is pretty important, and does facilitate that two-way, I guess, communication, which is really important. We then speak about emotional intelligence, and again, this is probably, I'd say, in the hierarchy, next level of thinking with regards to management and how you want to manage and lead, and the kind of leader you kind of be within your business. And I spoke to a lady, again, she's US based, who specialises in emotional intelligence, as well as being an optometrist and owning 2 practices. She's pretty passionate about that, and so that was a really interesting conversation. Probably not your standard, but one that was quite insightful with regards to how we can think about ourselves, and especially if we're in any type of leadership
with strong emotional intelligence is dealing with far fewer conflicts than a leader without that, because somebody who's attuned to the way that others are feeling is going to pick up a conflict situation when it's tiny. They have recognized it and the skills to say, what's going on today? They can listen to and respond appropriately, and the issue goes away. Where somebody on the other side who is not tuned into this and can't see things from another perspective might miss the small conflict completely, and all of a sudden they're dealing with something that's blown up to the point that they can't avoid it anymore, which in most cases is a much harder job and much less likely to get to a positive resolution. A leader with...
And so that really, again, it's easier to hear. Obviously, when it's happening in real life, you probably don't recognize it. But you look back at it retrospectively and you're like, oh, right, now the signs were there. So, topics like that for me are quite interesting, because then, it can help you improve as a person too, and communicate better. And I think that's really, like I said, whether it's training or whether it's, seeing, you with your patients, or whether it's these check-ins, it is all communication. That's what it all stems down to. And so being mindful of how the communication is occurring and the form in which it's occurring, I think is really critical, and can help, I guess, all aspects of business. And again, so that's in fostering a positive practice culture, and this is one of the last topics that we'll sort of touch on. But how we can do this, and this is, I think this is this is Joanne. So this is Joanne speaking about maintaining that positive workplace and that culture.
First part, I would say, consider when you bring somebody on what sort of personality you need. But fostering them together is really, as you said, it's about understanding their strengths. So if you can work with them to understand where their strengths are, assign tasks that suit, because that makes them happier. If people are working in their place of strength, they're actually a happier people, and they have more output. Generally, people are not working in a place of strength. That's when they actually struggle to get their thought process and to make things happen. So it actually makes them not work so well, and that's when you'll have a little bit of the issues that you have within teams. So I think it's about aligning them, but then doing a lot of things together, and then letting them understand their roles within that team. Because as people learn about each other, understand each other's strengths, understand how each other works, there's a place for everyone, and they naturally fall into that if you actually, foster that within the team. So I think at the first part, I would say. So
that's the essence of the podcast from the point of view of having those type of conversations. I mean, in that instance, Joe's talking about being specific and understanding that people have a preference of what they want to do, and being in line with that will help you build a better team. You know, at the end of the day, people, and you'll notice it naturally if someone's passionate and want to do it. I mean, again, there are times where we've got to do things we don't want to do, and that's a challenging part. But you'll naturally see people are drawn to a certain side. So there could be somebody that much prefers to do, you know, the technical. Someone's more extroverted, better for customer service. All those types of things. And if you're going to switch them around, again, simple thing to think about, but will have ramifications further on down the line. So making sure that you're being mindful and strategic about all of it and thinking about it. I think that's the essence of all of this. It's about just putting it in the mind and then letting you run with it as you see fit. The last one that I'll speak to is with Alison. Alison is a younger optom, and she set up a business recently. But I think it's important to learn from other people. I mean, the essence of the podcast is to learn and is to teach, but in a way that is informal. It doesn't cost anything, and you can just sort of, you know, expose yourself to different people. And success breeds success. And so if you see, it leaves clues. So you might see a clue that works for you. And I guess this is what Alison to some extent speaks about.
Lessons did you learn from that particular practice, and I guess your overall experience in New York, and what did you bring back to Australia from that point of view?
Number one, I think it speaks to anyone's experience moving overseas, but particularly for the optometry industry. Resilience, learning to think on your feet, learning to adapt to a situation. Obviously, I went through quite a few jobs before I found the place where I was happy. I think finding a practice that worked for me was a big part of why I stayed in New York for so long. And so I wanted to really create that same environment and curate that experience for myself here in Sydney. Moving back, taking those tidbits and little pieces of advice I'd learnt from each of the doctors and applying it to my own practice and making sure I stuck by those values.
What again, specifically? Simple in concept, but I think it can be really powerful. I think, and can be powerful without being so formal. And I think that's for me the secret to it. All right, conclusions, takeaways. So effectively, what I've tried to do is sort of wrap up about 18 months and continuing work with regards to the podcast, and sort of put it forward to you in a way that you could get something out of it without having to listen to the 30 episodes, and highlighting that. In saying that, the podcast has different types of conversations. So we do speak to people that have been in the industry for ages, that have an opinion. There are people that are successful business owners that speak about, you know, the challenges that they've had in setting up their businesses. So it's not just your internal team and how you can focus on that. It's also about hearing other people's stories, and that will continue to grow. And you know, and we're really excited about sort of these, and it's been received relatively well, which is really positive from that point of view. So I guess any take home, if there's any for you guys today, hopefully there's one or two, but pick 2 or 3 ideas out of anything that you've heard about. It could be something really simple as saying thank you to everyone at the end of the day. I'm not too sure. Don't be overwhelmed by them. I mean, they're obviously just ideas and they're tips. There are going to be some that resonate with you. There's some that you will go completely over your head. So that's the beauty of it. Everyone's different. But just, consistently work at it. I think obviously as an industry, we're always doing that in some capacity. Engage your team in the process. Encourage them to listen to it. If there's an episode that you thought was interesting, or there's a topic that you want them to think about, it's a non-invasive way to get them to listen to it in their own time. Whether it's on lunch or something like that, it's not onerous. It's just, it's just an idea. So there are little things like that, hopefully, that you could use to your advantage too, with the medium that it's presented in. I guess, keep learning. And networking is a big thing. So part of it is, this is almost like a virtual networking kind of system where you don't actually have to go and network, where you can speak and hear from other people. And as always, stay patient-centric. As I was saying earlier, I think it's all in the aim of giving the best service for your patient, and that's what it comes down to. So thanks for putting up with me for the last hour. I hope you got something out of it. And at the very least, hope you check out the podcast at some point. Thanks, guys.